Audi TT Mk1 DIY bumper respray with aerosols.
Hi all, Andy here and welcome back to the channel, where today I'm going to show you how to get as professional a job as possible at respraying parts of your car with just rattle cans. Yeah, you heard me right, I'm going to use rattle cans to respray the damage to my rear bumper. I have a bit of experience in the past with rattle cans, as I had a Mark III Escort back in the 80s and I was always painting it, and I got pretty good with the rattle can. And the secrets to painting with a rattle can are all about preparation. Preparation, preparation and more preparation. So I've got the bumper off, and the main problem with this paintwork is this crack in it here and this crazing over the top. So if you want to see how I took this off the car, then please do check out the link above. We talked about preparation. Getting the bumper off was the first step. The next step is to work out where we're going to paint. Now, thanks to the way that this bumper is designed, it has a natural shut line almost around here. So I'm going to use that as my guide. However, you can probably see there are items that I need to remove before I even start any of the prep work, and that includes the Quattro Badge, the TT Badge, and of course the number plate. So the first thing we want to remove is the number plate. Now I've already loosened it off, but one of the snags I had with 18-year-old rusty nuts and bolts is the screw that held it on, if I just put it up there, had completely gone. I couldn't get any purchase on it at all. So what I had to do was break the plastic surround around the screw, because it's pretty much shot, as you can see. I took my Dremel, so I've actually cut a line or ground a line across the head of this screw so that I could get some purchase, as it was a Phillips originally, but as you can see there's not an awful lot of the Phillips shape left. When I stick these badges back on the bumper when it's resprayed, I want to make sure they're in exactly the right place, keeping the bumper as stock as possible. So I'm going to measure from the corner of the TT badge up and the corner of the TT badge to my right hand side, but possibly your left as you're watching this, to ensure I get that right back where it needs to go. Same with the Quattro badge. I'm going to measure all the dimensions I can, left and right and up, so ensure that goes back in the right place. I have covered how to remove badges in a previous video, so if you want to watch how I do that with a piece of fishing line, then also click the link above. So let's remove this last screw holding the number plate on and get that off the bumper. Now this is also stuck down. Doesn't matter too much because we're going to be painting this bumper. There we go. So I'll need to clean all of this up and remove this glue. So I get an exact measure. I'm going to start this at 10, and we can see right across it's essentially 3.6 centimeters or 36 millimeters. Going the other way, it's 34 millimeters to the left of the badge. So 36 to the edge here, 34 here. To the top, the distance down is 37. So the distance from here to here and here to here is essentially the same. Doesn't look it though, does it? It's about 37 up to there. So we've got 37 mil, 37 mil, 36 mil, 34 mil. The TT badge is probably 39 mil on the outside. On the inside edge, bang on 30 mil. Up 28 mil. So I'm saying this should be, if I put that 10, this should be 28 down as well. Yeah, there you go. So that's 28, 28. So getting the fishing line around the T2, we're just going to saw this through. Now, unfortunately it's left most of the sticky on the car, so we'll need to remove that also, but it comes off fairly easy with a bit of a rub. Don't forget to store those somewhere nice and safe if you want to put them back on the car. So have to go at the Quattro badge. Oh, that comes off nice and easy. It is a particularly warm day today, so I'm thinking that the sticky's nice and soft. Peels it from the car. Interesting to see the layer of dust and dirt that's built up, that you think you're cleaning off the car when you're giving it a wash, that discolours the paintwork and you can't get off. So step one, debadged, and the number plate is off. So this dirty area behind the number plate, I'm going to give that a wipe down and a clean. Just using this sponge to loosen that up, and I'm using a sort of scour sponge because obviously this is going to be painted, so it's not such a problem. In fact, if anything, by me doing this to the paint, it will help the paint adhere. So that's all the sticky off, just a bit of sand left. So my next job is to attack all of this damage. So we'll get to work on that with about 120 grit sandpaper, I think. I'll then attack it with maybe a 400 grit and then 800 grit, so that we can lose and feather all of the edges in of the original paint before moving on. Now the best way to do this would be if it was on the car still, I think, because you'd have the pressure of the car to give it some rigidity, but I have got it on this table, so there's not a lot of movement, so I should better push a little bit on that. But I am going to put some cloth underneath the panel just to absorb any movement and protect the bumper a little bit. So using this line along the bumper here, down here and down here, I'm going to use that as my areas to mask off up to. Now that's not for spraying, that's just for rubbing down, so I know where my guide is. So I've now got my guide for sanding down, and that will just give the existing paintwork a bit of protection if I get a bit close to the edge. One of the benefits of doing this outdoors is any dust that's generated will blow away rather than blowing around your garage to then sit on your paint later, so it keeps your environment much cleaner. I'm still going to wear a mask though.
I started off with a 120 grit paper on the orbital sander. This allowed me to get rid of the loose paint as well as cut through the layers quickly and get down to the bumper itself. From there, I changed the grit of the paper down to a less abrasive 400 and then further to 800, which allowed me to feather in all the layers of paint. Moving to a more gentle grit paper reduces the ferocity at which you remove the material, and it also leaves you with a smoother finish. If you do not rub the other layers of paint back so the fade is gradual, you will end up with visible steps in the top coat and lacquer, which you want to avoid.
I haven't got any panel white, but I have got this isopropyl alcohol. So I'm just going to give it a quick once over with that to get rid of the dust and crap off it, so we can take a look at what's going down. So I'm now going to change to a much finer grit and see if we can feather all of this in. Also need to work on this little bit down here also. So looking at where I've rubbed the bumper back, you can see this is the plastic bumper, this is the primer, this is the top coat, and obviously there is a layer of clear coat over the top. But interestingly here, I think this is a bit of filler, so I reckon this bumper, and you can see I've rubbed through the filler there where I've had to rub this down because of that, what I felt was a crack in the paintwork. I think this has been filled and repaired in the past. Interesting to find that out. So I'm going to carry on keying this up, and we'll move on to the next stage, which is obviously going to be getting a layer of primer onto this once I've given it a wipe down with panel wipe. And I am going to do this by hand, just so I don't miss any bits. And this is where the masking tape comes in quite handy, because it prevents me from catching a bit of paintwork that I don't want to keep. Okay, so that's the entire part that I want to repaint, keyed up with 1000 grit paper. Let's get this inside my makeshift spray booth. Welcome to my makeshift spray booth, which you can see I've assembled the sheets of newspaper and masking tape. I've got the bumper all masked up now. I've been really careful to mask right down these shut lines. I think you class them as shut lines, or at least bodywork lines. I've given the bumper another good rub over with 2000 grit paper, just to rough it up enough to take the paint. And I've made sure I've caught all the areas that need some paint. Now I'm going to give the bumper a complete wipe down with some isopropyl alcohol as well, just to get rid of any sort of dust that might be in there. But I thought I'd talk a little bit about my spray booth. So I've sealed the garage off, as we're all limited on space, just in this one area. One thing worth noting, when you are building a paper wall like this, it's best to assemble it flat on the floor if you've got a big enough area, because when it comes to adding additional pages, where I've missed a bit, or where I've tried to seal things, sticking paper when it's moving around and it's up is quite tricky. So make sure you do this on the floor, sealed up with paper to stop any overspray leaking on the cars. By doing this in the garage, it gives me a little bit of control over the environment, so I can manage dust by cleaning, sweeping the floor and scrubbing it, keeping it damp to get the dust down. And it also eliminates any wind, if I was doing this job outside, from affecting the paintwork and blowing foreign objects onto the fresh paint. So the next thing I'm going to do is get some primer onto this. So let's move on to the primer. Probably worth touching on the paints I'm going to be using. So I've got 3 tins here. First is the plastic primer. So this will be used to coat the bumper and hide the areas we've rubbed down. Plastic primer because the bumper is flexible. I want good adhesion and a bit of flex, so plastic primer, definitely the way forward, prevents it chipping and flaking in future. Follow that up with the Audi silver. This has been colour matched to the car, however I'm still not 100% happy or convinced Halford's metallic silver spray for the Audi is going to be the right one. Claims it is, but if not, we can always purchase one from an online paint supplier. So once we've got the paint all good, we're going to finish it off with a coat of clear lacquer, so that will give it the nice shiny look once the bumper is painted and ready to go. So it will be primer, paint and lacquer.
Another quick wipe down with isopropyl alcohol to remove any remaining dust, and we're ready to start painting.
Now I can't stress enough how much you need to agitate these cans of paint. It's all very well giving it a shake and then starting spraying, but there is a mixture of propellants and paints and other chemicals inside this, and to get a nice even finish, which is what we're after, we need to make sure we've shaken this, and I would say shake it for a good 10 minutes. Don't just give it a quick shake. So let's agitate that now. You can actually hear the bead inside going up and down through the paint, and you can almost like feel the resistance where it's going through paint. So you really need to give this a good shake, and do this with all your paints, not just the primer, not just with the main coat, do it with the lacquer as well. We want a nice even coat. So I've got my mask ready to go as well. It's important you wear a mask whenever you're painting because you need to protect your lungs. I've also got, not that it's going to do an awful lot, but I've got my hoover down here, my wet and dry vac hoover. I'm going to turn that on so it's got a constant flow at least of air around the room, sucking the paint and the fumes away.
What I failed to think about was the outlet from the vacuum. As the vacuum was inside my taped off area, it was simply blowing air around the room. So to maximise its efficiency and not cause air disturbance for debris that could stick to the fresh paint, move the vacuum out of the boot.
When it comes to applying the paint, we're going to do it in horizontal strokes, backwards and forwards. Do it nice and evenly. I would say roughly between 8 and 10 inches from the paint, nice even strokes. If you've shaken this can enough, the paint will be even. I'm going to coat all of these areas that I've exposed through to the plastic underneath with the primer. So let's get my mask on and give that a go. I'm not going to be able to talk much when I've got the mask on, but you'll have to use your imagination. Plus the hoover's going to be making a noise.
To apply the plastic primer, I am using a horizontal backwards and forwards technique, keeping my hand moving and fading it out into the existing paintwork at the end of the stroke. Don't stop the stroke in one place. Make sure you release the pressure as you are still moving the can.
That's the first coat of 3. I'm going to leave 15 minutes now between the first coat and the second coat to allow it to dry and for me to get some air outside. After 15 minutes, it's touch dry, which is good. So another shake of the can for a few minutes and we'll do a second coat. Coat 2. Now that's the second coat on, and I didn't use the vacuum cleaner that time purely because it was actually blowing as well as sucking, so it might be blowing dust around the room. Started to build up a nice layer of primer, so I'm about to do coat 3 of the primer. I'm then going to give it a very slight sand with maybe 2000 grit paper just to take some of the shine off it, because when you're spraying you need to keep the aerosol moving. Don't stop for too long, and that's the worry, is if you are going backwards and forwards over an area where you stop towards the end and come back over the same bit, it almost builds up too much too quick, so you tend to get shiny spots. I think that can affect the top coat, so I'm going to give this another coat in primer, give it a light sand, and then we will crack on with the top coat.
In hindsight, it would have made more sense to primer this whole area. That would have created a more uniform paint finish in the long run. I gave the third coat a further hour to dry and harden, and then a light sand with 2000 grit paper to flatten any high points and remove the rough finish from overspray.
So it's still keyed for the top coat, but it just takes that powdery edge off all over. Doing this by hand allows me to get a really light feel into all the curves, so I'm not putting too much pressure into any particular area and removing too much of the primer coat. Just giving it a wipe down with a cloth once more. Right, let's get some top coat on this. So running with the Halford Silver, give it a good agitation for at least 5 minutes, nearer 10, so you can hear that bead inside the can really getting to work and mixing the paint together. Now it's a bit of an unknown quantity at this point how close a match this silver is going to be, but I am hoping by hiding it in these lines it's not going to be too bad. Something worth pointing out is don't ever be tempted to touch it, see if it's dry during the process. I would say wait at least 30 minutes between coats before you touch anything to test it. If you've gone quite heavy on the paint and it looks quite shiny, definitely leave it alone for longer, maybe an hour. The last thing you want to do at any stage of this process is touch that paint, put a fingerprint in it or pull the paint off, because you're going back to square one if that happens. This is all looking good now. Let's get this paint on.
I started off with a fine, short, sharp mist coat to cover the primer over before switching to longer controlled strokes to get an even finish.
3 coats of the top coat later, I've left it overnight to dry as well and harden, and the finish, it's okay. My temporary spray booth did its job somewhat, but I've noticed there are a couple of little marks on it where I guess stuff in the air has landed, overspray. Because I didn't have a very good extraction system, the hoover didn't really do its job, so it's something I've learned for next time. However, I can still see very slightly the shadow of where the repair was and where I rubbed it back through the primer coat. However, that's as good as I'm going to get at home, so I'm going to lacquer that up now, giving the lacquer a really good shake. Hopefully some of that finish might be lost in the lacquer. Let's give that a go and see how it comes out.
Prior to doing this, let's take a closer look at the top coat finish. While it lacks any shine yet, the coat is even and consistent. There are no runs in it, so I've kept the can moving. It is also worth pointing out I did this on a particularly warm day. Too cold and the aerosols tend to deposit the paint in droplets, so try and do this on a warm day. 18 degrees plus, I would say.
I've got 2 coats of clear coat on the bumper now, and I feel it's important to point out to you guys my mistakes as well as my successes. The clear coat has been a mistake. Essentially, I've applied too much clear coat in one coat, in one area, and it's caused the clear coat to run. All is not lost though, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix that now. But just so you know, the primer went on lovely, nice and smooth, nice and even. The top coat went on nice and smooth, nice and even. But when I've applied this clear coat, I've thought, well, it feels a bit rough still after the first coat. So I've applied it too thickly, too much in one place. I haven't been moving the can quick enough, and I've had build-ups and runs. So I'm going to show you the runs up close, but they are here, a little one here, some down here, some here, some more here. So I've got at least 5 runs to fix. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take some 2000 grit paper, some water, and I'm going to do it a wet and dry sand, take off that top layer of run, then clear coat once again, and hopefully I should lose it. Apart from that, the finish of this bumper is surprisingly good. But let's get on with that job now. So I've got some water, so I'm going to wet the area I'm going to work on. Also going to wet the paper. So again, this is 2000 grit, and I'm going to do this by hand. I'm going to work across the run, because I don't want to take too much of the clear coat off where I don't need to. Okay guys, so I've sanded it back, sanded the clear coat off, and I was a little bit concerned that you could still see some patches, so I've just blown over that quickly again with the Audi Silver. I have rubbed this back with 2000 grade to remove the clear coat. I've just gone over that area again with the silver, and I'm going to clear coat it once more. There was a couple of areas that were also the same. I don't think they look too bad now, so I'm just going to hopefully clear coat that and that will go away. And the bit down here, once I've cleaned this dust up from underneath, I think that could just have a bit of clear coat and you won't see that. It's another day and it's another spray, so we're going for take 2 of the clear coat. So I'm going to continue building these up nice and slowly with this can and another can of lacquer. So here's the moment of truth. You can see there's quite a good shine on that. There's a little bit of inconsistency in colour where I had to repair that clear coat that had run. Not sure if that just shows up in this light. There's a little bit more there, but the shine looks great now, and the runs have all gone apart from that one, but that will be hidden behind the number plate. But there is a great shine to it. So I'm going to unwrap the rest of the bumper because that's as good as it's going to get. So I'm going to score it about 7 or 8 out of 10. Now we don't know at this point if the colour match is any good either. I'm hoping it is, because that would be atrocious if it's not a great colour match. Seems to be a bit of leakage there through the paper. Not sure why that is. So that one needed to clean up. Yeah, that colour match is okay, but it's still not great. But the best thing about this bumper is that horrible crack in the paintwork is now gone. And to me, that's the most important thing. So with that off, that is a very slightly different colour, I think. Right, let's get it back on the car anyway. So that's the bumper back on the car. And as you can see, it's passable, but in my opinion, there's improvements to be made in the technique. So what have I learned? Well, first off, we talked about preparation, and that was all very good, but there are some extra bits we can do for future. One of which is your work area. You do need to get some sort of ventilation out of there, sucking out all the debris. It must be as clean as possible, because I feel there's a couple of areas where something has settled in the paint after I've left the booth. Next is take your time. Do not rush the job, because I feel I rushed the clear coat and I've paid the price for it in the long run. The primer and the top coat, I think they came out really well, and if I got the clear coat right, this bumper would look spot on. My verdict on repairing clear coat is it's a very difficult task to do, so if you do make a mistake on that clear coat, I think you should really take it back to primer. Shine wise, it is pretty shiny and it feels lovely and smooth, so I have got that right. However, where I've put paint on top of clear coat on top of original paintwork, there is definitely some areas of discoloration. So I've got two options. I can buy a compressor and paint it myself, or I can take it to a professional and get it resprayed. Cost for that, I've been quoted around £300, or alternatively I can try and track down a matching bumper from a second-hand breaker that may have one for maybe a third of that price. So there you have it, that's my experiences. And if you like what you've seen today, then please do give this video a thumbs up, and also think about subscribing to my channel, where you'll find a whole host of content on the Audi TT Mk1. As always, thanks for watching, see you soon, take care.